Happy All Hallows Eve. Tonight you are in for a real treat. My name is John C. Skullington, and this is my beautiful partner, Miss Skullette O'Hara, and tonight we will be hosting Spooky Southern Tea. Well, hello, my spooky friends. Silky couldn't make it, but instead you have the pleasure of having your scary tales told by me and Miss Skullette.
Oh, Skully, I didn't know you'd be so good at this.
Just wait, my dear. We have some very spooky tales, and I'm sure Silky will be back at some point. But tonight we are going to start with a story sent in by Joanne T. Hi, Silky. I have another story to share with you. I am truly sorry that Silky couldn't be here. She's a bit tied up. That pesky background noise. I previously told you the story about my husband, a retired police officer, and a couple of stories that I experienced myself. Here are two more. My husband and I live fairly close to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and we go there once or twice a year. We enjoy staying at a bed and breakfast as opposed to a more modern hotel. About 15 years ago, we found a bed and breakfast that was a short drive from Gettysburg, but we thought we would check it out. When we arrived, it was in a sleepy little town, and huge 3-story building was almost completely dark, and the parking lot was empty.
Oh, Skully, that sounds perfectly lovely.
We gathered our luggage and entered the code to open the front door, only to find out we were the only guests that night. We had the whole building to ourselves. The building was built in the 1700s and was huge, having a ballroom on the second floor. I was a little uneasy being the only guest that night, but I finally fell asleep until the middle of the night when we were awoken by the sound of footsteps walking down the hallway. We thought perhaps someone else checked in or the innkeeper had come by. No one was in the hallway, and the next morning we asked if we were the only ones staying there, and yes, we were. The place has become more popular over the years, so strange noises in the night can be explained away. The second story involves another bed and breakfast located in Gettysburg. This time my mother-in-law was along, and we booked a place that had several outbuildings for guests, and then you walked a short distance to the place where breakfast was served. When you walked in our door, there was a kitchenette to the left, and to the right was a single daybed where my mother-in-law was going to sleep. Directly in front was a set of stairs that led to the second floor. You went up a few stairs to a small landing, then proceeded straight ahead to the bathroom, or to the right where my husband and I were going to sleep. Our room did not have a door, but you did have to walk through a doorway to enter it. We had all settled in after a long day of shopping and sightseeing, and were looking forward to a good night's sleep. About 5 minutes after we turned out the light and were just about to go to sleep, I heard my mother-in-law coming up the creaky stairs and enter the bathroom, shutting the door behind her. I was hoping that wasn't going to happen all night long, but I finally dozed off. Again, in the middle of the night, I opened my eyes to see a short, chubby lady with gray hair and wearing a house dress standing by my bed. I sleepily thought it was my mother for some reason, but she was staying with my sister and brother-in-law in another building. I went back to sleep, and the next morning I told my husband that I was glad his mom wasn't up and down all night long. He said yes, he was worried because he heard her come up to the bathroom right after we turned in. We mentioned it to her at breakfast, at which point she told us she never got out of bed the previous night. In a few weeks we are going back to that B&B and booked that very same room. My mother-in-law will not. Miss Skullette, do you think that we should join them on their little trip to the bed and breakfast?
Skully, I think it would just be divine.
And the ghosts are free. My next story comes from Lexi Payne. My husband was working graveyard one night and my children were fast asleep. I had insomnia, so for once on this particular night, I fell asleep and had been sleeping well. I felt a tiny finger poking me and a small boy's voice saying, "Excuse me, excuse me." I opened my eyes. Every hair stood up on my body because my kids were a lot older than this voice that was speaking to me. I didn't turn around until the voice said it again, "Excuse me, lady." I slowly turned around and a young boy, around 3, was beside my bed, dressed in 20s style clothing, with a hat on his head. He stopped talking, but smiled and disappeared. I've had these things happen to me since I was 5. Miss Skullette, how do you feel about child ghosts?
Well, I'd love to have a few children around the house, don't you?
Some people are scared of children ghosts.
Well, I don't know why. They're perfectly lovely.
Our next story comes from Florence. When my grandmother passed away, I was heartbroken. I was at work and was told that my family called, asking that I go home. Grandmother had deceased. I cried driving to my aunt's house. Family members were so devastated. I went into my cousin's bedroom and cried uncontrollably. Then I heard grandmother call my name 3 times. At that moment, it was as if time erased the fact that she was gone. I got up, wiped my eyes so grandmother would not see that I was crying, and walked down the hall to grandmother's room. When I saw the bare mattress, it shocked me back to reality, and I stopped crying. I cannot remember the rest of that day. At the funeral home, I was hesitant to go to the coffin. She had lipstick on and makeup, which she never wore, and I was glad because she looked totally different. And I was okay with that because it really eased my pain. That was in 1975. Miss Skullette, do you think that was really her grandmother coming to give her some comfort?
Why, Skully, of course I do. You know, we ladies, we're very nurturing.
I guess you're right. And we're both glad that it gave you some comfort. And we've got time for one more story. I've been following your channel for a few months now and I love your content. This encounter that happened to me in 1998 on Halloween night when I was about 10 years old. My dad was in the Army and was stationed in Hawaii at this time. My parents decided that they would take us, myself and my 3 siblings, camping at another base. This base was called Barber's Point, and it was a Navy base that had recently closed down that same year. So the base itself was pretty desolate and eerie, like an abandoned town. There was a camping site on the base, and being that the base was closed down, I think we were the only ones there. Once we got to the base, we settled in. It started to get dark when my older sister told my mom that she needed to use the restroom. My mom asked me to accompany her to the restroom, which was down a dark dirt road with trees on either side. The only thing we had to light our path were small keychain flashlights, which weren't very bright. There was no light on this dark road. However, there was one street light by the restroom, but that was a ways away. Once we got to the restroom, I waited for my sister to do her business. Then we proceeded to head back to the campsite. I recall my sister saying, "Wow, it's so dark out here." Then she said, "You know what would be scary? It would be scary if someone was chasing us right now." I told her to stop talking like that because I didn't find her comment funny. Then suddenly my sister turned around and said, "What was that?" I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. I didn't hear anything. She turned around once more, but this time she let out a loud scream and quickly took off running, leaving me in the darkness. At first I thought she was joking, but she never turned back. I started running to try to catch up with her, but she was too far down the road to the point where I couldn't even see her. That's how dark this road was. Then to my horror, I heard another set of footsteps behind me, accompanied with a heavy breathing. That's when I realized I wasn't alone, and I really was being chased by someone or something. I started trying to run faster, and I started praying and asking God to please help me. I was petrified and I felt so helpless. Praying seemed to be my only assurance. I suddenly heard a voice in my mind that said, "Shine your flashlight behind you." As crazy as it sounds, I realized that's a good idea. The thought crossed my mind that if I was attacked or kidnapped, I could identify the perpetrator. So I did as the voice instructed, and I shined my flashlight behind me. Then the voice told me to shine the light behind you again, but this time I want you to turn around and look. All the while I was feeling like this thing was getting closer and catching up to me. I gathered the strength to turn around and shine my light at whoever was chasing me. What I saw was a figure that was all black, that looked to be about 3 feet tall. It looked like it was hunched over with claw-like fingers, skinny legs, and disheveled hair. I couldn't make out any distinguishing features, only the outline of it. I watched as this demonic being was lifted into the air and flung into the ditch to my left and disappeared in the darkness. All of this happened in an instant. I continued running to get back to the campsite, tired and out of breath. When I got back to the campsite, I told my parents what happened. I don't know if they believe me or not, but they didn't bother going out to investigate. I truly believe this being was a demonic creature. From what I saw, it did not look like a human being. I don't try to push my beliefs on people, but after that experience, I think people should really be careful about what they speak, because there is a power in words. I truly believe my sister spoke something evil into existence that night out of carelessness. Thanks for taking the time to read my story, and I hope you feature it in one of your upcoming videos. Well, Miss Eliza, we certainly did enjoy that story, and it sounds like there was something non-human on that dark road.
Oh, Skully, I'm glad I feel safe next to you.
And that's all the stories we have for tonight. But again, I do hope you have a very happy All Hallows Eve. And I'm sure Silky will be back at some point.
Skully, don't forget the last part.
That's right. Whatever you do, remember to stay spooky.